Hi, I'm Dr. Loren M. Hill. I am your academic career coach. And this month, I wanted to focus our segment on mental health awareness because, as some of you may know, May is Mental Health Awareness Month. And you also know that I am a licensed clinical psychologist in addition to being a coach. So I wanted to take some time out to check in with you all about your mental health and just see how things are going. Because as we move through our careers and we are advancing and we're trying to juggle a lot of things, I also know that we have other parts of our lives outside of our career. But as you all know, I don't separate career out from everything else because you're a whole person, and what happens at work can influence what happens at home, and what happens at home can influence what happens at work. So in order to try to have some sense of balance or maintain some focus, I think it's good for us to just periodically check in and see how we're doing. And to that end, I like to set the theme with just breathe. So you might say, well, Dr. Hill, we breathe automatically? And absolutely we do. But I want to think about breathing intentionally. And there's this notion of mindfulness that you may have heard of. And I think it'd be great if we practice some mindful breathing. And we don't have to get too technical around this. It just really means paying attention to what's going on in the moment with regards to mindfulness, and specifically with regards to the breath, right? So take a moment and just do a slow inhale and then a slow exhale. And I'm pretty sure that whatever's going on in your day or in the moment, your body really appreciates you taking a moment to just breathe and focus on the breath. So, as we think about our mental health, I it might be helpful for us to provide some context as to what may influence our mental health. And sometimes what I find is that it can be our perspective or our outlook, right? So those are influenced by what is going on sort of in your immediate situation, or maybe even a local or global. And so sometimes people come to me. In fact, I was just talking to my one of my coachees, and he was saying to me, how do you feel about XYZ situation, something that was going on in the current events? And I said to him, I definitely have opinions about things that go on, current events, things that are local, national, global, but I really try to be mindful about how much of that I take in and what I can do. Is there something, an action that I can take that will really help me sort of sort out what I'm going through at that time? Or is this just going to make me more anxious, right? Because maybe there's nothing I can do. It could lead to feelings of frustration or hopelessness or even anger. And while those are all feelings that we can experience at times, I want us to really be mindful about how much of that we're taking in and how it may impact our perspective or our outlook, right? So, generally speaking, people who know me think that I'm pretty optimistic, right? I do think that there's something positive that we can focus on every day. It could be the smallest thing, or it could be something pretty major. But if we can focus our attention on something that is good. Maybe it's an accomplishment. Maybe it's something that is huge. Someone that I'm working with just got her letter for full professorship. So of course, we're just over the moon about that. Or, it could be something simple. And so it could be grand or it could be small, but tend to focus on the positive. And that is not to say that I don't have my fair share of things that happen that are disappointing or could make me feel very differently about things. But again, my set point is usually pretty optimistic. Now, that's when, again, things seem to be going great, right? So we think about that. And then there's times when things, maybe they're going okay. So then it's more neutral, right? So if something is neutral, then we can say, it's not all that great, but it's not all that bad. So neutral is okay as well. Then we have the view that, some people have, which is called pessimistic, right? So those individuals usually, sometimes they might have a more negative outlook, right? Things are terrible. Life is terrible. It's bad. It's not going to get any better. And, what's the point? So again, that's not my natural set point, but I certainly know people who have that. And then, some people that I work with. And I would say that it doesn't have to be a permanent set, right? A lot of times, what influences our outcome or our view, our worldview, are some of these events that are not in, places that we can control. So the outcome of that could be that we end up being kind of pessimistic. So I'd like for us to think again about breathing, because even when things aren't going so well, or they could seem very dismal, or you just, got a performance review that is disappointing, or maybe you found out that a class that you were hired for is under enrolled, and now you're not going to have that class, or what is your pay going to look like, or the university may be closing a department and it's out of your control. But I really want you to just take a breath and think about some of your options, right? What can you do to move forward, and being strategic about that. So as we think also about the importance of our mental health, we want to connect that to our physical health, and the breath does that perfectly. So what you'll notice is that when you're doing your deep breathing exercises, and it doesn't take that many, we started this with just taking one deep breath, but I recommend that you try to do 5, right? Just because it can't hurt you, right? And in fact, it will help you. So physiologically, that breath will do you some great benefits. And then mentally, it will clear your mind as well, give you a moment to pause. And we've talked previously on the podcast about pausing. And so remember, there's a lot of talk about physical health, going to see your physician for your annual checkup, and other things that you might be in touch with. You're trying to exercise, or at least get out and do some walking around that campus, or if you're working virtually, walking around the neighborhood. Maybe you walk the dog, or maybe you have an exercise buddy. But it's important to think about your physical health, equally thinking about your mental health. So what type of mental health wellness exercises can you do? And one of them, again, it's very simple, is just breathe, right? So the next thing that I wanted to just talk to you all about really quickly is when might you need to do something more than just breathe, right? When might you need to talk to someone, and who might you talk to? And if you're feeling very stressed, overwhelmed, you really are, you're at a point where you're like, okay, I tried breathing and that's not working. I really need some additional help. Well, there's a few things that you can do. You can find a peer to talk to, right? So sometimes your network will include a peer support group, or your university may have a formalized peer support group network there at campus. So try to reach out to someone. But you also want to be mindful about who you're talking to and what you're talking to them about. I don't really want you to, go into a peer situation where everybody's talking about how bad it is, although there's a space for that. But I want you to be thinking solution focused. So if you're having this conversation, or you're having conversations with peers, and there's no end in sight, if you will, or there's no takeaways or strategies or ideas about how to help navigate this space, then you might want to look for some alternatives. So the next thing that you could probably do is, talk to a counselor. So there are counselors all over. There are different terms for them. Some that I'm very familiar with are the LPCC, which is the Licensed Professional Counselor. There's also therapists, and those are both the LPCC and the master's level therapists are generally licensed, or they are moving towards licensure, which is a bit different than peer support, because peer is just that, it's peer to peer. We're both academicians, and we're talking sort of informally about our situations. But then when you go into counseling, then you are speaking with someone who is a licensed individual in their field. We are also probably very familiar with psychologists. I'm one. And that too is a person, a professional who is licensed in their state to provide psychotherapy. And then there's the psychiatrist, where if you need to have some medications prescribed to you, the psychiatrist would do that. And so, again, there are times when you will need to talk to someone, and talking to your coach is fine, but hopefully if you are working with a coach and there's some other issues coming up, your coach will suggest that you talk to a therapist or talk to someone. And you can find someone like myself on Psychology Today. That's a great resource, because you can type in your city or your zip code, and a local therapist will populate for you. And those folks have been vetted, and they're certified, and you can probably find a very good match there. You can also go through your insurance, or you can ask for referrals. So again, May is Mental Health Month. I'm wearing green, and green is the color of mental health. If you want to find out more about how to take care of your mental health during the month of May, and of course, as a psychologist, I would say you want to take care of your mental health every day, not just in the month of May. But think of something that you can do that will keep your mental health in a, really a good space, because it's all about your quality of life. And I'll have some additional tips for you on my website. I'll be putting things out on social media during the month of May, because I really think it's important to take care of your mental health, and your mental health will take care of you. So remember, we want to start very simply by just taking a breath. Thanks so much for joining me today as I just talked briefly about mental health awareness. And, the last thing I would say about it is some people are like, I'm really in a great space and I think my mental health is fine. So, what I would ask is that if that is the case, that you check in with someone else and see how they're doing, because oftentimes someone might be what I have found sort of suffering in silence. And it would be great to have a friend or a colleague just check in and say, how are you doing today? So when that happens, just breathe, recommend that they breathe, and hopefully we'll all be taking some mindful, healthy breaths together. Thanks again for joining me. I am Dr. Loren M. Hill, and here's to your Mental Health Awareness Month, and here's to your academic career success.